Simon, thank you so much again for doing this for the high school fashion industries. I know that we've been a partner with you for a while. So first of all, how are you doing with everything and handling this craziness?
Well, I'm older, so I'm not looking at why don't I have a job, blah, blah, blah. I'm 68. So I'm older, I'm in a good place. I'm lucky. I have a nice place where I'm with my husband, Jonathan Adler. So no complaints. There's plenty of people who are really struggling in a way that fortunately I'm not. So I'm very aware of that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're doing really well and your family's doing well. So, that's the most important thing among everything.
Yes.
Uh, so I guess, in terms of, our student body and just thinking about their future, because I know the day-to-day stresses are obviously getting to people, but I'm sure just, I know for myself and, people I speak to, you just start thinking about the future and, what the future is going to hold. So I guess in terms of, a student now, we have two different types of students. We have students that are actually graduating and moving on to college or looking for a job versus a student that's, still in school, whether it's a ninth grader going to 10th grade or somebody that's still going to be in school. How do you, in terms of, how do you foresee things in terms of the future of the industry, in terms of, the fashion and related industries? How long do you think it's going to be before we sort of see an uptick?
Well, I think one has to be realistic. I entered the job market in the early 1970s, and it was also a very challenging time. There were huge economic problems in England where I grew up, and there was a real shortage of jobs and opportunity. There was strikes everywhere. I won't go into detail, but it was a very challenging time, and everybody said, "Oh, you're going to have a hard time getting a job." And I did. I worked in factories. I worked in. I finally got a job in retail, an entry-level job, and that's how I got my start in an entry-level job in retail, where and I stuck with it, and time went by, and things improved, and opportunities opened up. But I'm sort of familiar with that landscape. Obviously, this is a different type of thing with this pandemic, but the thing that, looking back at that period, the thing that seemed to make a difference was not so much your skills or your talents or any of the things we talk about or your dreams. The things that seemed to make a difference among me and my friends was just things that were attitudes and approaches that you had, which is good because those are things that you can control. And I
Right.
thought, what were the traits that I had that enabled me to get a job, an entry-level job in a little department store in my town, and hang on to it and build on it over time. And I thought, yeah, these were character traits. So I made a list. Do you want to hear my list?
I would love to hear your list. And I think our students would love to hear the list. So you're really just talking about, I think as you said, right, things you can control, things that you can do, regardless of what kind of market it is. This is not the first bad market in business. And so I'd love to hear those lists of skills and traits.
Yeah, I think this is good news for students and people entering the job market, because it's like, oh, I'm very young. I don't have all these genius skills that you acquire from being in a job, but there are things I can do. So I made a list. So it's 4 things, and it's easy to remember because it makes an acronym.
I don't know if you know, I'm a big acronym person.
Oh, are you?
Yes, I have something called a VTOD, a vocabulary term of the day. So I'm always looking for acronyms. I love it.
Well, this one is ROPE, ROPE. And the first word is resilience. And so I thought resilience is very important because, you know, to get a job, to get your foot in the door, you have to try 10, 20, send out a load of resumes, knock on a lot of doors. So in order to deal with that process, you have to be resilient. If somebody says, no, we can't, like a friend of mine who's got a young daughter who's at college, she said, will you try and help my daughter get a job in a podcasting company? And I emailed her resume, and the people emailed right back and they said, are you kidding? We're not hiring, forget it. No, you've got two choices. You can become very upset or take it personally,
Yep.
or whatever, or you can just say, okay, next.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so resilience, and resilience is something you see with people who, very successful people, you know, like a Madonna or Beyonce or Anna Wintour, or, you know, people who've become very successful. They're usually very resilient. They've taken a lot of kicks. You know, someone like Michael Kors seems like a very successful guy. He's been bankrupt several times over the years in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
90s. But he was a resilient guy. So resilience, very
Okay.
important.
Okay, we
I
got
think
the R.
got the R.
Got the R.
And then the next one, O, R-O. O is for optimism.
Yep.
So, you know, optimism goes hand in hand with resilience. Don't you agree?
I do agree. I think you just have to just think about, you know, things are going to be okay. You gotta feel that. That's how I live my life every day.
Yeah, and even if you're a pessimist and you're a pessimistic person, you have to pretend to be optimistic. You know, if you say, oh, you know, the one person rejects you, you think, I'm never going to get a job. Oh, that's me being pessimistic. That's what RuPaul calls that, your inner saboteur.
Nice.
The person who tells you it's never going to happen, blah, 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 blah. You have to fake it till you make it. Like, oh, what's the optimistic way to look at this? The optimistic way to look at it is plenty more fish in the sea. I used to think, oh, well, it's their loss. If they didn't hire me, that's
Yes.
their loss. You know, so you can be cheeky and optimistic. It helps you not take everything so seriously,
Yeah.
even if it is serious, you know.
And generally people don't want to be around pessimistic people. You know,
No.
people want to surround themselves with optimistic people, and, you know, just sort of like, again, even if it is sort of, you know, inside you're sort of like struggling, but it just like on the outside, like you want to be around positive people.
Yeah, it's like that sketch on Saturday Night Live, Debbie Downer. You know,
Love that sketch.
it's I mean, your students probably maybe not familiar with it. It's a fun thing to YouTube. This girl called Debbie Downer is always, you know, coming up with the most horrifying
Yes.
view of what's going on, and it's really quite hilarious. And everybody around her freezes, which is what you said, right? The people around you.
I think we're gonna have a lot of YouTube searches for Debbie Downer after this conference call.
Yeah, it's so funny. R-O, resilience, optimism. Next one is, maybe you can guess, P.
Perseverance?
Yes!
Oh.
See, you are an acronym guy.
I felt your theme. Your theme.
Actually, I put persistence, which is
okay.
the thing.
Yep.
So they're connected to resilience, optimism, persistence, like a real not giving up thing. You know, I think about RuPaul's Drag Race keeps coming into my mind because the contestants who have persistence, like they get a horrible critique on their outfit, but they keep going and they keep going and they're persistent. I mean, you must see that at your school.
Yeah, I talk about it. I actually talk about that concept a lot, about how you just accepting failures and mistakes as opportunities to learn. You know, that you're never gonna succeed. You know, success is not gonna happen without mistakes and failures, and you got to have that persistence. So I always talk about that, and that you should just sort of, obviously it's hard at the time, but it's really how you react to that failure, or that, you know, sort of like hitting yourself up against a wall and having that persistence like you're talking about, that will really make the difference in terms of ultimate success.
And I see it when I work with your students on our annual window project. You know, there's always things that aren't working out, that look terrible. You have to discard them. You have to persist in looking for solutions. It's part of what makes work fun, is that, you know, persisting. And so, you know, it's tied in with problem solving, because you can't really solve problems unless you're persistent. Problems don't just solve, you know, quickly as
Yep.
we might want. So I think, and perseverance, basically totally the same thing. So yeah, persistence, perseverance. And then the last one, I'm going to test you again. I bet you
Oh man. Oh man. Uh, okay, it's
R-O-P.
E. Excellence? No?
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm. Okay. All right. I
Yeah,
should have got that one.
excellence is good, but see, I think when you're an entry level, you're going for an entry level job, you don't have to be excellent. You know, you don't
Yes,
have
that's
to be
true.
supreme. You don't have to be, you just have to have a great attitude. Everyone, I mean, over the years I worked at Barneys, there were people who worked in the display studio that just weren't that good, but they had such a fantastic attitude that they were great. They made the whole machine work, even though they had some really, you know, skill issues and whatever. So their enthusiasm, like, never underestimate that. Think about that. Like that show Cheer. I'm sure a lot of your students have
Yes.
been watching that Cheer. Jerry on Cheer,
Yeah.
who's the mat talker. He mat talks the whole time, and keeps everybody. And you know, he screws up occasionally. He doesn't do such a great job, but he's so enthusiastic that he's like, it's the gasoline that powers the whole team. So I think, and enthusiasm is free. It doesn't cost
Yes.
anything. You know, a 2-year-old can be enthusiastic. So, and then again, if you're not an enthusiastic person, you fake it. You know,
Yeah.
think if you realize, oh my God, I'm being very negative, I'm droning on and having a very negative view. I need to channel Jerry from Cheer. Get some
I
Jerry in this.
I can honestly say that I've watched Cheer also. I've been like sort of looking around on Netflix, and I you know, and everybody, you know, I read some articles about Cheer, so I actually watched a little of it. So I definitely know what you're talking about.
Well, I think Cheer is very relevant to this conversation because resilience, optimism, persistence, enthusiasm, you see it. So it's like a billboard on that show. You know, they're competitive athletes, and I think sports is a good place to look during this time. Like, okay, you want to work in the fashion world, but think about sports. It's very competitive, and that's a good thing. That's okay,
Yeah.
and you can compete in ways that are not so obvious to you. So competition is good, and you can get a long way without being Michael Jordan. You know, you can get a long way. Weren't you in basketball?
Yes, I was. Yes.
So talk to me about that. Don't you think sports are a great
I
metaphor?
I I always compare. I mean, I sort of look at what I do, you know, in a very competitive sports environment. Like I always compare myself to, basically, I'm the coach and of the school. And so I, you know, and I think probably one of the biggest, and everything that you're talking about with rope, um, resilience, optimism, persistence, enthusiasm is actually what my job is, and to sort of lead those efforts. And I always think that, I think if my, you know my students, like, I think they could probably see that in me, hopefully every day, especially the enthusiasm part, where I mean, like, how can I expect a student to be excited to come to school every day if I'm not excited about being at school? And I always just think the best teachers have so much great enthusiasm for their content and their craft. And I always like, that's the first thing I would, when I observe teachers, like, is that teacher showing an enthusiasm for what they're teaching? Because if you don't show enthusiasm, why should that student even listen, right?
Yeah.
The teacher's not enthusiastic about what they're doing, so why should I be enthusiastic? And I just think that enthusiasm piece, and like you said, it's free, doesn't cost anything. You don't have, anybody can be enthusiastic. And I just think that's again, like it gets into the optimism, right? If you're enthusiastic, you're an optimistic person, or at least you're pretending to be. And those are the people you want around you. And so, and that competition piece, as a, sort of my other life was a basketball person and playing and coaching. And I just think that you got to, whatever you do, whether it's, fashion or sports or business, just like you got to, people are gunning for you, and you want to be the best. And you're not going to be the best always, and you're going to make mistakes and you're going to fail, but you learn from it. And as long as you love what you're doing, you just keep doing it.
I think you get to be the best by utilizing your rope. That's how you pull yourself up. Because if people would come for an interview at Barneys and they would say to me, I'm this, I'm that, I'm so great, I'm the best. I'm like, oh dear, this person's terrifying me. But if they come in and they're like, wow, so this is the Barneys corporate office. I've always wanted to work here. I'm so excited about this company. I was just at the store. It looks so beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, this person is not telling me that they're the most incredible thing ever. They're telling me they're excited about coming to work here. And I think that's something that, when you're young and you're a teenager, and enthusiasm isn't your go-to. Everybody's trying to be cool and, okay, well, let's see. And maybe, a little guarded, a little, that's the natural go-to for teenagers. Whereas in sports, even if you are a teenager, that doesn't mean anything at all. The only thing that means anything is your positive energy flying through the door like a Jerry. Everyone should be a mat talker.
Exactly. And you want to, I would say that, like you spoke about, you want to be obviously confident in your skills, but you want to be very humble in what you don't know. And that's the whole purpose of going to school. That's the whole purpose of getting an entry-level job, is that I'm here to learn. I'm here to, just make the team successful. And those are the type of people that other people want around them, to make, to help them, to impart, somebody wants somebody that they can impart knowledge to and share knowledge with, but also will make them, better at what they do.
Yeah. I had another thought for P when I was writing this, and that was punctuality.
Yeah.
Because punctuality is very connected with optimism and perseverance. So just say theoretically, hypothetically, one of your students is interviewing for an entry-level job at Macy's, which is a legendary store, or at Ralph Lauren in the wholesale office. Now in this new environment, instead of 25 entry-level positions, there's going to be 3. Yeah. So how do you stand out? You stand out by saying, with your rope, you're not trying to persuade them that you're this incredible genius who's going to change the company. That would be ridiculous, because you're right out of school, you're right out of college. But if you can persuade them that you're a good energy person, without, obviously, you don't have to be insane, you
don't want insane.
Well, the vibes are great. When that person came in, they were so excited, and they had a love for the company. Because you remember, when you're going for an interview, you're talking to somebody who works there. They might have worked there for 20 years. They want to hear that you're excited and you see this as being an opportunity, and you're not treating it like a potential, like you're enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, I really, you got to just act like you're so excited to be part of this organization, this company, whatever you do, that just wants gets off that vibe that like this person's going to be a real benefit to the whole organization and to that individual. It's just got to like shine through.
And I think, and you deal with so many students, but like a student doesn't have to sell themselves. They do it anyway in their attitude and their approach to their work. They don't have to specifically say, listen, I'm great, I'm blah, blah, blah. But if they act in a way where they show they're an optimistic, enthusiastic person, you're like, oh, they've already sold themselves indirectly, without consciously doing it. Because you can spot that with kids. How long have you been at it?
Yeah, I mean, this is my 24th year in education, between teacher and being an administrator, and yeah, it flies out, when you interact with somebody, almost immediately, that they're just they have those rope qualities, and it's really you want to gravitate towards that person, and you want to help that person, because generally most people want to help others, and it's still a competitive environment, but generally, like, where you're dealing with human beings, and you want that positivity, you want to see those attributes of optimism and persistence, and so I really connect with the ROPE acronym very well. I don't be surprised if we get it on a school poster somewhere, in the fall. We'll give you full credit, obviously.
Oh yeah.
But
my lawyer, if you. No, I'm sure somebody else has used it. It's like it's an easy one.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of acronyms, and just in terms of like creativity, and then sort of as like an attribute that's sort of needed these days, because it seems like there might be like a new world out there, post COVID. Can you maybe speak to the just how valuable creativity is?
Well, in my own experience, when I got an entry-level job in a store, my creativity was irrelevant. What was relevant was my punctuality, my attitude, my my ability to solve problems and work hard. That's what really cared about. And then as I progressed and got to have more responsibility, I had to be more creative. And then on the job, I became more creative.
Okay.
So it's a process. And I think creativity, if you get a job in a design studio or on a website or at Etsy or something like that, you'll start in, and your primary responsibilities may not be that creative, but if you persevere with your rope and you get more involved in the machinations of the company, your creativity will become increasingly important, and you'll develop it. It's not this finite thing that some people have and some people don't. It's something you develop through use. Like an artist, the drawings they do when they're 10 or 15 years old, they're good, but then you keep doing it and you get better and better and better. So yeah, I mean, creativity. Sorry, after you.
I was just going to say that's a really important point, because our students need to realize that when you do get that entry-level position, you might not be doing exactly what your sort of like dream, and like sort of level of creativity and level of freedom, and then you might be doing something, just the concept of getting your foot in the door, and showing that again the punctuality and the enthusiasm, and again you don't, like you want to put yourselves in a position that you have over time to develop your creativity and show it off, but that's not necessarily what you might be doing immediately.
Yeah, I mean, in my own case, my first window display job, I was schlepping. I wasn't designing the windows because older people were doing that. People who'd been there 10 or 15 years. I was carrying paint pots, painting walls, cleaning the mannequins, doing the sort of entry-level things. But because I was a creative person, I used to do freelance jobs. So if I was passing a little store, I think, oh, I could do their window. And at the weekend, Saturdays, Sundays, I would do these additional little freelance projects where I had full control and I was designing it and I was creative. And I think the same applies in fashion. Okay, you want to be a designer maybe, and you're excited about that. Well, maybe your first job is in administrative job in a wholesale showroom, or you work in a factory, where they're actually making clothes and you're in the shipping department or wherever you are. There's no reason you can't be making gorgeous clothes at the weekend, in the evenings for your friends. I used to make my own clothes when I was a teenager, when I was younger. And your creativity, you'll find out, if you're really creative, your creativity will find outlets. And I have a friend who, he was in that position. He had a job where he didn't really, he wanted to be a designer. So he started making these great dresses in his basement, in his bedroom, out of West African fabrics, those great West African fabrics. Yeah. So beautiful. And then eventually he got an Etsy shop, and he has, his job, and then he has his Etsy shop. So if you're creative, you're not going to always get an engraved invitation to display it. There's plenty of people making great stuff. And I think you need, it's good to recognize that unless you're fabulously wealthy or you won the lottery, you're going to need a job that makes you financially independent and you can pay your bills. And there's nothing more satisfying than that. Well, there is, but it's very satisfying. Yeah. I remember that feeling of going home. I worked in a bottle top factory. I left school at 16. I subsequently went back, but I worked and I remember that pay packet. Oh my God, these people actually paid me.
Yeah.
And, like that thing of taking some money home to your family and being financially independent is enormously rewarding. Yeah. Especially in a challenging environment. And don't ever underestimate that, how important that is. And at the same time, you've got your financial independence here that you're working on and paying your bills. And then your creative dreams are here. They're not mutually exclusive. You should be working on both at the same time.
Yeah, when we had the monthly assemblies, like there were like basically two of the slides just talked about, like, say, it was a correlation between the level of education you had and how much your earning potential, and just the importance of that financial independence, that the power of that financial independence, that will just give you opportunities that a lot of people don't have. And then, like you said, it's very satisfying in terms of it's going to create further opportunities, and I think that perseverance, persistence, that optimism, that enthusiasm, that resilience is really required in these days when everything is going to be a little bit tougher to get, in terms of an internship, a job, sort of a spot, but again, like you were saying, I mean, I think that the economy will recover, and it might, who knows how long it will take, but it will come back, and that we need to hone our skills right now so that when the opportunities open up maybe a little bit, we're ready.
Well, as you're talking about that, I'm remembering different people that I hired over the years at Barneys, and I remember two people spring to mind. One of them, he came in and I said, "What are you doing now?" And he said, "Oh, I'm working at the Salvation Army store on 8th Avenue." And I said, "Wow, And what he said, I said, what's that like? And he said, it's horrible, but you know, I deal with it, and the colleagues are fun, and blah blah blah. And I was just so impressed that the guy, you know, he saw the necessity of paying his electric bill and not asking his mother for money, and
Yeah.
blah. And then another guy, I remember, told me, I'm a baggage handler at the airport. And I thought, so you're coming for this display job because you want to get into retail display, but you're currently a baggage handler at the airport, hired. Like
Right.
anybody with that kind of chutzpah, who's like a self-motivating, hardworking. I was like, what's that like, being a baggage handler?
Yeah.
Blah, 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 blah. So, you know, I'm just saying, people, you think when you go for an interview, everyone's judging you and blah, blah, blah. They are, but they're not necessarily looking for what you think they'd be looking for. They're not looking that you're this shishi, fashiony person. They want to know that you've got, you know, some chutzpah, to use the
Yeah,
word.
I would say that, you know, being working at the Salvation Army store or the baggage handler at the airport, you're going to develop those skills, those rope skills, pretty quickly. And that you know, listen, there's nothing wrong with, you know, a job is a job, and work ethic is work ethic.
Yeah,
Um, and you know, I mean, you know, those are even great interview situation. Like you said, like you were interested because it wasn't like the classic, um, you know, person that you might, you know, interview who's got this like, you know, pristine resume or anything like that. It's something a little out of the ordinary. And you had, I'm sure you had a lot of respect for those people that you know did that to earn a paycheck and to do that.
yeah, and I think most people would have a lot of respect for that person. I think the problem today is we live in this world of Shark Tank and Project
Yeah.
Runway, where the model, the framework that's presented is this somehow mysterious lottery win. You know, you're going to get discovered. Even when kids win Project Runway, I think they still probably have to get a job. Unless they're independently wealthy, they have to go work for somebody else and acquire more skills before they're able to go out and get funding to start their own company, which and they might, once they work for somebody else, prefer that. Because I never really worked for myself. I always worked for a company. I wanted somebody else to pay the electric bill, you know. And having your own company is a significantly horrifying responsibility.
Yes.
um, and so some people thrive with that. I was always wanting, you know, I have to unblock my own toilet at home. I don't want to be responsible for all these other ones.
Yeah. I'm a warrior by nature, and like, you know, this like very you know, just thinking about everything. Like I don't think, I mean, obviously I have a job where I have to think about everything, but it's like but it's stressful. So I totally understand. But at the end of the day, like I you know, it's very, you got to have a certain personality to do that. And
Yeah,
everybody needs to appreciate like what their personality is, and whether, you know, are you, you know, I mean, like, you know, you might not want to own your business. Like you said, it's very stressful versus like just working for a company. And, you know, and again, like it just the type of personality you have.
yeah,
Because again, you, that level of stress will also impact, you know, how you feel about yourself and your health, and just, you know, trying to create that balance between whatever you decide to work and your life outside of work.
yeah. I mean, I've seen so many people start their own business in the fashion world. It's extremely difficult business to, I would never want to do it. It's very, very difficult. But some people have the drive,
Yeah.
and they have a little bit of a business sense, which you need. Um, I've always enjoyed being an employee. I mean, but I used to, as I say, um, if I saw opportunities that I could do in my own time, I think that's a great way of getting the yin and the yang. You know,
Yeah.
you have your job where you love your colleagues, you get your medical insurance paid. Those things are incredibly important. Colleagues, medical insurance, stability in a job, even if sometimes it's boring or sometimes it's difficult. That idea of a job is great, and then you can get your creative rocks off if there's additional creative outlets needed. You'll find a way to do that.